The words hit me like a truck. "Romance is just for the dating phase," my wife declared casually over dinner, as if commenting on the weather. 10 years of marriage reduced to a business arrangement in a single sentence. I stared at her across our kitchen table, fork suspended mid-air, waiting for the punchline that never came. What prompted this cold statement? Earlier that day, I had surprised her with flowers at her workplace, something I hadn't done in months. The receptionist smiled knowingly as I walked through the door, bouquet in hand. When my wife emerged from her office, her expression wasn't excitement or appreciation, it was embarrassment. She quickly grabbed the flowers, thanked me curtly, and disappeared back into her office before any colleagues could notice. That evening, I asked what went wrong. That's when she dropped the bomb that shattered my perception of our relationship. According to her, romantic gestures were unnecessary performances meant only for the courting stage. We were well past that now. "But don't you miss how things used to be between us?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "The spontaneous dates, weekend getaways, the passion." She sighed heavily, putting down her utensils. "That was before real life, before mortgages and career advancement. We're adults now, not lovesick teenagers." Sleep evaded me that night. Lying beside her, I realized we had become strangers sharing a bed. When did this happen? The woman who once couldn't keep her hands off me now treated intimacy like another household chore to be scheduled and completed efficiently. The next morning, I watched her morning routine with new eyes, mechanical movements, checking emails while brushing her teeth, planning meetings during breakfast. Where was the woman who used to dance around our apartment in my dress shirts, making pancakes on lazy Sundays? For a week, I tried everything to reignite what we had lost. I cooked her favorite meals, suggested a weekend trip to the coast, even bought tickets to a concert she wanted to see. Each attempt met with practical objections. Too much work to do, too expensive, too impractical on a weeknight. After my final attempt, a handwritten love letter left on her pillow was found crumpled in the trash. Something broke inside me. If romance was only for dating, then perhaps I needed to date again. Not to cheat, not to hurt her, but to feel alive again. That night, while she worked late, I stood in front of our bathroom mirror. The man staring back looked defeated, comfortable. When did I start wearing the same faded t-shirts every day? When did I stop caring about impressing the woman I loved? A plan formed in my mind. If my wife believed romance belonged only in the dating phase, I would give her exactly what she wanted, or rather, what she didn't want. I would start dating again, without her. The next morning brought clarity. I wasn't going to have an affair or destroy what remained of our relationship. This wasn't about revenge. It was about rediscovering the man I used to be before I became just a provider, just a husband, just another household fixture. My first step was simple. I called my barber and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. The same guy had been cutting my hair for years, always giving me the same practical, low-maintenance style my wife once said looked professional. This time, I asked for something different, something with edge. When he finished, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Good. Next stop was a clothing store I would never have entered before, the kind with loud music and stylish attendants. I spent more than 2 hours than I had on clothes in the past 2 years. No more faded jeans and worn button-ups. I bought fitted shirts, premium denim, a leather jacket that cost more than our monthly utility bill. Back home, I hung everything in my side of the closet while my wife was still at work. Then I sent her a text, "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." It wasn't a lie. I was working, on myself. That evening, I walked into a jazz bar downtown. Not to meet women or drink excessively, but simply to exist in a space where I wasn't defined by my relationship status. I ordered a whiskey neat and listened to the saxophone player pour his soul into his instrument. For the first time in years, I felt present in my own life. My phone buzzed with a reply from my wife. "Okay." Just 2 letters. Not "where are you?" or "when will you be home?" Just acknowledgement of information received. This cold efficiency had become our language. 3 nights later, I did it again. This time, I found a bookstore cafe hosting a poetry reading. I sat in the back sipping espresso, letting strangers' words wash over me. A woman smiled at me from across the room. I smiled back politely, then focused on the performer. This wasn't about finding someone new, it was about finding myself again. Over the next 2 weeks, I developed a new routine, work during the day, then exploring the city at night, a photography exhibit, a cooking class, a hiking group that met for evening trails when the weather permitted. I started keeping a journal again, something I hadn't done since college. At home, things remained unchanged on the surface. We orbited each other like distant planets, exchanging information rather than emotions. The property tax bill came. I scheduled the car maintenance. We need more coffee. The basic administration of shared lives. But something was shifting. I caught her watching me as I dressed in my new clothes. Her eyes lingered when I applied cologne before heading out. Once she asked where I was going, with an inflection that wasn't quite casual. I answered truthfully but vaguely, meeting some people downtown, not a lie. 3 weeks into my experiment, I came home to find her waiting up despite the late hour. She was on the couch, still in her work clothes, pretending to watch TV. "You've been going out a lot," she observed, eyes fixed on the screen. "Yes. Where do you go?" I sat across from her, maintaining distance. "Different places. I'm trying new things." She finally looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in years. "With whom?" There it was. The question that revealed she had noticed the change in me. I considered my response carefully before speaking. With myself, mostly. Sometimes I meet new people. Sometimes I just observe. "I'm dating again." Her expression shifted from curiosity to confusion. "What do you mean you're dating?" I stood up, suddenly energized by the confrontation I had been anticipating. "You said romance is only for the dating phase, so I'm dating again, just not with you." The color drained from her face. She sat perfectly still, processing my words. When she finally spoke, her voice was controlled, measured, as if addressing a difficult client. "You're being childish. This is what happens in long-term relationships. The excitement fades. That's normal." I shook my head. "No, that's a choice. We chose to let the excitement fade. You chose to dismiss romance as unnecessary. I'm choosing something different now." She stood up abruptly. "Are you seeing someone else?" "Not in the way you're asking," I answered truthfully. "I'm not sleeping with anyone. I'm not looking for another relationship. I'm rediscovering myself outside of this marriage." Her eyes narrowed, searching for deceit. Finding none, she retreated to our bedroom without another word. The conversation wasn't over, but round one had ended in a stalemate. The following week, my exploration continued. I joined a social sports league on Tuesday nights. Beach volleyball, something I'd enjoyed in college, but abandoned as impractical once career and marriage took center stage. The team welcomed me despite my rusty skills. After the game, they invited me for drinks at a nearby bar. Among them was a woman who played opposite me on the court, athletic, confident, with an infectious laugh. During group conversation, our eyes met occasionally. Nothing inappropriate happened, but for the first time in years I felt that electric current of possibility, of being seen as attractive, interesting, not merely as a husband or provider, but as a man. My phone buzzed repeatedly during the evening. My wife, breaking her usual pattern of indifference, sent multiple messages. "Where are you? Who are you with? When are you coming home?" I answered truthfully but briefly, out with new friends from volleyball. Home around 11. When I arrived, I found her waiting in the living room, pretending to watch television. "You smell like perfume," she accused as I hung my jacket. "It's a crowded bar. I probably smell like a lot of things." Her eyes scanned me, looking for evidence of betrayal. "Is this how it's going to be now? You coming home late, smelling like other women?" I sat across from her. "This was your decision, remember? Romance is just for the dating phase." Those were your words. I'm just following through on their logical conclusion. By dating life again, by refusing to accept that passion and excitement are only for young relationships. She crossed her arms defensively. "So you're punishing me?" "No," I replied calmly. "I'm choosing not to punish myself anymore. For years I've tried to keep our romance alive while you dismissed it as immature and unnecessary. I sent you flowers. You were embarrassed. I wrote you love letters. You threw them away. I suggested spontaneous trips. You called them impractical." Her defenses wavered slightly. "We have responsibilities, bills, careers. We can't just act like teenagers." "No one's asking us to act like teenagers. I'm asking us to act like people who still desire each other, who still surprise each other, who still make an effort." She was quiet for a long moment. "These people you're meeting, are they all women?" "Does it matter? I'm not sleeping with anyone. But yes, I'm interacting with women who treat me like I'm worth talking to, worth looking at, worth knowing." Something flashed in her eyes, a glimpse of the woman I fell in love with, fierce and passionate. "You're my husband," she said. "And you're my wife," I replied, holding her gaze steadily. But somewhere along the way you decided that meant we were done trying to impress each other. Done with romance. Done with the chase. I'm not accepting that anymore. She stood up suddenly. I'm going to bed. Good night. As she reached the hallway, she turned back. This isn't going to work, you know. Whatever game you're playing. I smiled, not unkindly. It's not a game, and it's already working. This is the most honest conversation we've had in years. After she left, I sat alone in our living room, contemplating the distance between us. How strange that in pulling away, I might actually be creating the first real connection we'd had in years. Tomorrow would bring more confrontation, but tonight, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt hopeful about our future, whether together or apart. At least we were finally acknowledging the truth. Sleep evaded me that night. I lay awake, listening to my wife's measured breathing from her side of the bed. The physical distance between us mirrored the emotional chasm we'd allowed to form. When did we stop holding each other through the night? When did we establish this invisible border down the center of our mattress? Morning arrived with uncomfortable silence. We moved around each other in our routine dance. Coffee poured, breakfast eaten, teeth brushed, all without meaningful exchange. As we prepared to leave for work, she finally broke the silence. We need to talk tonight. I nodded. Yes, we do. At work, I found it impossible to focus. The confrontation looming ahead occupied my thoughts entirely. What did I actually want? To save our marriage, to end it, or something else entirely? A complete reimagining of what our relationship could be. That evening, I arrived home before her. Instead of waiting in anxious anticipation, I decided to take control of the narrative. I cleared the dining room table of its usual clutter, mail, laptops, the detritus of our busy lives. I ordered food from the restaurant where we had our first date, not as a romantic gesture, but as a reminder of who we once were. When she walked through the door and saw the setup, confusion crossed her face. What's this? A proper setting for an important conversation, I replied, pulling out her chair. She sat cautiously, eyeing the familiar takeout containers. This is from... Yes, I interrupted. I thought it appropriate given the circumstances. We ate in relative silence for several minutes before she placed her fork down deliberately. What exactly are you trying to accomplish with all this? The nights out, the new clothes, this dinner? I considered my answer carefully. Clarity. Her eyebrows rose, waiting for elaboration. For years I've been trying to maintain connection while you've been pulling away, dismissing romance as childish, treating passion as impractical. I needed to understand if the problem was us, or just me. And have you found your answer? Her voice was unnervingly calm. I think so. When I stopped trying so hard to make you happy, when I started focusing on my own happiness, suddenly you noticed me again. Suddenly you cared where I was going, who I was with. Suddenly the idea that I might find fulfillment elsewhere bothered you. Her cheeks flushed with anger. So this was a test? A manipulation? Not a test. An experiment. I needed to know if you still cared enough to fight for us. She stood abruptly, pushing her chair back. This is ridiculous. You're acting like we're in some kind of drama. Real relationships aren't about grand gestures and constant excitement. They're about commitment through mundane reality. I remained seated, maintaining my composure. Is that really what you believe? That passion and excitement are antithetical to committed relationships? That we sign up for emotional mediocrity when we say, I do? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. Romance is just for the dating phase. Your words, not mine. She paced the dining room, agitation evident in every movement. So what happens now? You keep going out, meeting other women, coming home late. Until when? Until I beg you to stop? Until I start buying lingerie and writing you love notes? Is that the goal? The goal is honesty. For too long we've been lying to each other and to ourselves, pretending this cold efficiency is normal, pretending we don't miss what we used to have. Her eyes filled with unexpected tears. You think I don't miss it? You think I enjoy what we've become? This vulnerability caught me off guard. Then why fight so hard against changing it? Why dismiss every attempt I've made to bring back some spark? She collapsed back into her chair, suddenly exhausted, because it hurts too much to try and fail, because every time I see glimpses of what we used to have, it reminds me of everything we've lost. Silence hung between us as her words sank in. Finally, the truth. I need some time, she said quietly, some space to think. What does that mean? She stood again, more resolute now. It means I'm going to stay with my sister for a few days. Figure out what I really want, what's worth fighting for. As she packed a small bag, I remained in the dining room surrounded by the remnants of our meal. The food from our first date restaurant had gone cold, forgotten in the heat of confrontation, a fitting metaphor for what we'd allowed to happen to our love. When she reached the door, bag in hand, she turned back to me. This isn't just about romance, is it? No, I admitted. It's about respect, desire, effort. It's about refusing to accept that this is all there is. She nodded slowly. I'll call you in a few days. After the door closed behind her, I sat alone in our suddenly empty home, wondering if I'd just saved our marriage or ended it. 3 days passed without communication. The silence in our home was deafening. I continued my routine, work during the day, exploration at night, but the purpose had shifted. What began as rebellion now felt like rehearsal for a potential future alone. On the 4th evening, I returned from a solo dinner to find her car in the driveway. My heart raced as I entered the house, unsure what awaited me inside. I found her sitting on our couch, legs tucked beneath her, looking smaller somehow, vulnerable. "You're back," I stated the obvious, keeping my distance. She nodded. "We need to finish our conversation." I sat across from her, giving her space. She looked different, not just physically, though her hair was styled in a way I hadn't seen before, but her energy had changed, less defensive, more present. "These past few days," she began slowly, "I've been thinking about what you said, about when things changed between us." I waited, letting her find her words. "Do you remember our first apartment? That tiny place with the broken heater?" A faint smile crossed her lips. "Of course. We used to huddle under every blanket we owned during winter, and we were happy," she said softly. "Despite having nothing, despite struggling to make rent, we were genuinely happy." I nodded, uncertain where this was leading. Somewhere along the way, I started believing that growing up meant giving up certain things, that serious adults in serious relationships didn't need passion or surprise, that stability meant predictability. She looked directly at me now. "When you brought me flowers at work, I wasn't just embarrassed. I was angry. Angry that you were disrupting the narrative I'd created, that we were beyond such things, too mature for romance." "Why?" I asked. "Why was that narrative so important to protect?" She took a deep breath. "Because admitting I still wanted romance meant admitting I was unsatisfied. It meant facing that I missed feeling desired and exciting. And that terrified me. For the first time in months, perhaps years, I saw my wife without her carefully constructed armor. The ambitious professional, the efficient partner, the practical planner. All those identities momentarily set aside. The truth is," she continued, voice barely above a whisper, "watching you these past weeks has been excruciating, not just because I was jealous, though I was, but because you looked happy, alive. The way you used to look at me, for me." A tear escaped, tracking down her cheek. "And I realized I've been punishing both of us for years, pushing away intimacy because it made me feel vulnerable, dismissing romance because it reminded me of what we'd lost." I moved to sit beside her, not touching but closer. "We haven't lost anything that can't be reclaimed." She looked skeptical. "Can it though? After everything? After I pushed you to this breaking point?" "This wasn't a breaking point," I clarified. "It was a turning point. I realized I had two choices, accept the slow death of our connection or fight for something better. I chose to fight." Her hand found mine, tentative at first, then gripping with surprising strength. "I want to fight too. But I don't know how to go back." "We don't go back," I said firmly. "We go forward. We create something new, something that honors who we are now, not just who we were when we met." She nodded slowly, considering this. During these days apart, I went on a date. My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral. "With myself," she clarified with a small smile. "I went to an art exhibit alone, dressed up, took myself to dinner after. It was the first time in years I did something purely for pleasure, not productivity. Relief flooded through me, followed by genuine curiosity. And how was it? Terrifying, then liberating." Her smile widened slightly. "I think I understand what you've been doing. It's not about finding someone else. It's about finding yourself again." "Exactly." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the first non-awkward quiet we'd shared in longer than I could remember. "I don't want a divorce," she said suddenly, firmly. "But I don't want to continue as we were either. What do you want?" She turned to face me fully. "I want us to date again. I want to remember why we chose each other. I want to choose each other again. Actively, not just exist together by default. For the first time in weeks, hope bloomed unreservedly in my chest, not because she had returned, but because she had returned changed as I had changed. That, I said, squeezing her hand, sounds like the beginning of something worth fighting for. 2 weeks later, I stood in front of our bathroom mirror adjusting my tie, not for work, not for another night exploring the city alone, but for a date with my wife. "Are you ready?" she called from the bedroom. Almost. We had established new rules for our relationship. Separate activities 2 nights a week, time to pursue individual interests and maintain the independence we'd both come to value. Date night every Friday without exception, no discussing household logistics or problems during these dates. A complete ban on taking each other for granted. When I stepped into the bedroom, she was fastening an earring, dressed in a burgundy dress I'd never seen before, one she had bought specially for tonight. Her hair was styled differently, closer to how she wore it when we first met. The effort meant everything. "You look incredible," I said, meaning it more than I had in years. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "So do you." For our first official date, we decided against revisiting old memories. No returning to the restaurant of our first date or places heavy with history. Instead, we chose a new experience, a speakeasy-style jazz club that had opened downtown, one neither of us had visited. In the car, nervous energy crackled between us, the awkwardness of new beginnings mixed with the comfort of shared history. Her perfume, also new, filled the space with unfamiliar notes. She had researched the scent, chosen something different, another conscious effort to break patterns. "This feels strange," she admitted as we found parking. "Good strange, but strange. I know what you mean." At the club, the host led us to a small table near the stage. Dim lighting, live music, craft cocktails, all the elements of a proper date. We ordered drinks from a bow-tied server and fell into conversation that deliberately avoided our usual topics. No work complaints, no household tasks, bills or schedules. Instead, we talked about the music, books we'd read recently, places we wanted to visit, philosophical questions we'd never bothered to ask each other. Who were we now, beyond husband and wife? What dreams had we shelved that still smoldered within us? "I've been thinking about going back to school," she confessed after her second cocktail. "For photography. Not to change careers, just to nurture that part of myself again." I leaned forward, genuinely interested. "I had no idea you were still passionate about that." She shrugged, a touch of vulnerability in the gesture. "I haven't mentioned it in years." Seemed impractical. "Practicality is overrated," I said, echoing words she herself had spoken in our dating days before. Responsibility reshuffled our priorities. Her laughter, authentic, uninhibited, washed over me. "Who are you, and what have you done with my husband?" "He took your advice and went back to dating." Her smile faltered slightly. "Do you regret it? Any of it? The way things escalated between us?" I considered the question seriously. No. We needed the earthquake to rebuild. Comfortable routines were killing us slowly. She reached across the table, taking my hand. For the first time in years, her touch wasn't perfunctory or scheduled. It was intentional, desiring. "I've missed you," she said quietly, "even though you never left." After the club, we walked downtown, fingers intertwined, no destination in mind, just the pleasure of movement together through the night air. We stopped for dessert at a 24-hour bakery, feeding each other bites of chocolate cake like the shameless new couples we used to mock in our cynical phase. Back home, the atmosphere had changed entirely. Our house, once just the setting for our parallel lives, felt charged with possibility. We moved toward each other with newfound intention, no longer husband and wife performing expected functions, but two people choosing each other deliberately, passionately. Later, lying together with the comfortable weight of her head on my chest, I realized what had truly changed. Not just the romance or the effort, but the fundamental perspective. We had stopped seeing our relationship as a finished product to be maintained and started viewing it as a creation constantly in progress. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, tracing patterns on my skin. How close we came to losing this. How easily we convinced ourselves that passion was only for beginnings, not for the long haul. She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at me with eyes that held both wisdom and renewed desire. "I was wrong when I said romance is just for the dating phase." "We were both wrong," I corrected. "I gave up too easily, accepted your withdrawal instead of challenging it." She leaned down, kissing me with surprising intensity. Promise me something. Anything. Promise we won't forget this lesson. That we'll keep dating each other, keep surprising each other, keep choosing each other actively, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. I pulled her closer, sealing the promise without words. We had nearly lost everything by accepting the slow death of passion as inevitable. Now we understood the truth. Love isn't sustained by momentum alone, but by continuous, deliberate choice. We would keep dating. We would keep discovering each other. We would never again mistake comfort for completion. Our story wasn't ending. It was finally, truly beginning. Looking back now, I realize how close we came to becoming a cautionary tale. Two good people who once loved each other fiercely, slowly freezing into polite strangers who happened to share a mortgage. There were nights during those weeks of dating myself when I lay awake wondering if I had already crossed an invisible point of no return. I felt guilt for the deliberate distance I created, but I also felt a strange, fierce pride. For the first time in a decade, I was choosing myself, not selfishly but necessarily. I was no longer willing to be the reliable backdrop to someone else's life while my own colors faded. That choice hurt her, yes, but it also woke me up. I rediscovered laughter that didn't need to be scheduled, curiosity that didn't have to be justified by productivity, desire that wasn't rationed like a scarce resource. I remembered that I am allowed to take up space, to be interesting, to be wanted. When she walked out the door with that small suitcase, I was terrified. Not of being alone, I had already rehearsed that, but of the possibility that we had both changed too much to ever fit together again. I sat in our quiet house tasting the metallic fear that maybe the version of us that once burned so brightly had been permanently extinguished by years of neglect. Yet the moment she came back and said, "I went on a date," with myself, something inside me unclenched. I saw the same spark I had rekindled in myself flickering in her eyes, hesitant, bruised, but undeniably alive. That was the moment I understood. We hadn't lost each other, we had simply stopped looking. We had mistaken familiarity for completion and comfort for connection. We had confused growing up with giving up. Now, when we dress up for Friday date night, when she wears perfume I've never smelled before, and I wear the leather jacket that still makes her bite her lip the way she did at 25, I feel a gratitude so sharp it almost hurts. We are not the same reckless kids who fell in love over cheap wine and impossible dreams. We are better. We are deliberate, awake, choosing. Every touch carries the weight of almost having lost this. Every glance says, "I see you, I still want you, I will never take you for granted again." I used to think love was a fire you lit once, and then spent the rest of your life trying not to let die. Now I know it's a garden you have to keep tending, especially when life gets heavy. Some days we still slip into old patterns, tired silences, logistical conversations, taking each other for granted for a few hours. But now we catch ourselves faster. We apologize quicker. We reach for each other in the dark without waiting for an invitation. I am proud of us. Proud that we chose to burn the comfortable numbness rather than live in it. Proud that we risked everything to save everything. And every time she laughs at one of my stupid jokes in a crowded bar, or when I catch her watching me across the room with that same hungry look she wore the night we met, I think, this is what we almost threw away. We didn't. And that makes every new kiss feel like the first one all over again.